Hello, thank you for joining us on yet another interesting edition of the program, The Woman in You. I've got pride, I have class, I've got potentials, and I am special. Joy Uche is my name, and I'm glad to be here again this day to talk about womanhood. My womanhood is my pride, and I'm glad to be a woman. How are you doing today? Joining us today, we have an interesting personality to talk to on The Woman in You. We want to meet the woman in Agbanyeru Chukudebe. She is owner, Playlane and Lawrence Printers Academy here in Asaba. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Joy. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Who is Agbanyeru Chukudebe? AKA Aunty Abby. I forgot to say that, whether she's popularly known by that, Aunty Abby. So let's get to meet Aunty Abby proper. Who is Agbanyeru Chukudebe, aka Aunty Abby? Tell us.
Okay, Joy. As you said, my name is Agbanyeru Chukudebe, but everyone knows me as Aunty Abby. First of all, I'm a mom. I have a beautiful daughter, two lovely, beautiful, rambunctious twins, 3 and 12 respectfully, but I should say about to be 13. She'll kill me if I don't say it. I love children. I've always loved children. I love learning. I love education. I'm the first daughter of my parents. We were five children, so I'm a sister. I'm a people lover. I'm an educator. I love books. I love music. Off the top of my head, I think if an alien were to come and ask me, those are the first things I would say.
Wow, beautiful. I like the way you've just described yourself. Okay, let's not go there. Let's talk about other things now. Let's go down. Let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's look at your early years. How was life growing up?
Growing up, well, I did have an interesting background. I come from not really two cultures, two nationalities. I could say two cultures. My mother was African American, but my father was he was Igbo from Onitsha, and they met while my dad went to school.
You're saying was.
I lost both my parents.
Wow.
I lost my father when I was 15, and my mother just 2 years ago.
Oh my.
Yes. So, thank you. That shaped my childhood because growing up, you never felt you really fit in 100% in both worlds. So, like when that term African American came up, we felt we were really African American because my mother was Black American from Texas, and my father was Onitsha, proud Onitsha man, and my mother was a proud African American woman. And so we grew up eating cornbread and cabbage and egusi soup and eba. So I learned how to cook both my mom's food, soul food, and other foods, and baking. My mom had a sweet tooth, and also learning how to go to the market. I grew up in Nigeria, here in Asaba, also in Enugu. And so I went to a lot of elementary schools.
Why?
Well, we were all born in the States, and then eventually my dad had this dream of coming back to Nigeria and developing the country. So after all my siblings, myself and all my siblings were born, we eventually relocated back to Nigeria. My dad's dream of developing his country and trying to do something to put Nigeria on the map. Basically, that was his generation. They all left and went to the States and went to some of the best schools, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and got the education and had the dream of coming back to build Nigeria. So that's the house I grew up in, with my father very determined to develop and build Nigeria. He was an electrical engineer, while my mother was an educator. So I kind of followed in her footsteps.
So you pick it from there?
Yes, I did. Okay. So my mom, when she came back, we were in Enugu first, and she actually had the first Playlearn. So she started Playlearn in Enugu.
Wow.
And my younger brother and sister had the opportunity of going there. I didn't. I was already in elementary school. So eventually we visited Asaba. My mom fell in love with Asaba because it was right across the bridge from my dad's hometown. And Asaba at the time was a very quiet town. And so we moved here, and I finished my elementary school, and then I went to Federal Government Girls College, Benin. And there I was a boarder, and I made some of my closest friends, and we're still close till now. And that also shaped my growing up.
Yeah.
And then after that, as I said, I lost my father before I completed secondary school, and then eventually all of us went back to the States to complete our schooling. Yeah, so I ended up going to completing my first and second degree in the United States.
In education?
Well, at first, after losing my dad, and my dad was misdiagnosed when he fell ill. And so his death was a big tragedy within the family because he died very young and very early. So I knew from a very young age I wanted to work with children. So I was a little girl who would gather all the children in the community with a little blackboard and teach them. And so I always knew I wanted a school. But after losing my father, I felt, I also had a passion for medicine and science. So I thought, well, maybe I'll follow in my dad's footsteps and become a doctor. So my undergrad was actually as a pre-med biology student. So I went to Mills College in Oakland, California, and I majored in biology. And then afterwards, it was interesting because while I was in school, almost all my jobs, volunteer and paid, had to do with working with children. I just constantly worked with children, mostly very young children. And then I started working in low-income areas with children who were in need. So mostly African-American communities, going there and inspiring children to learn how to read and how to aspire to become better. And so I joined the Freedom School movement, and which was all actually, it was kind of it was kind of reinvented from the civil rights movement in the 60s. And so I worked and worked and worked, and then it became time for me to apply to medical school. And I actually, during an interview, that was when I discovered that I really wasn't supposed to be a doctor. I was always supposed to be an educator. And it was right during the interview that I actually realized that, because the doctors kept asking me, we don't understand why you're here. All your resume and everything speaks to being an educator, and all your jobs and your interests speak to working with children. So why am I not pursuing that dream? And for the first time, I started thinking about myself and my first dreams, not just an obligation. And I realized that you know, the quote of where your treasures are, that's where your dreams and treasures are, that's where you shall find the gold. And I dropped everything, and I focused on becoming an educator.
Wow, what an interesting story. So I can say right now that, because I was going to ask you, what were your dreams as a young girl? You know, every young child has this dream, I want to be this in future, I want to be this, like you said, I want to be a doctor and all of that. So you finally got to know what you had passion for, and you pursued a kind of, should I say, you followed your dream.
I did.
So I can say you're living your dream today.
I am. I can say I really, I'm living my dream. I really am. And sometimes your dream can come in many forms. Because when I thought I was supposed to be a doctor, my dream was still there. I actually met a doctor who told me, well, you can become a doctor. You're smart enough to be a doctor. Why don't you become a doctor and still have a school? So for a time, I rolled with it. But it was really interesting because so many people around me knew I was supposed to be an educator, but I had this obligation. And I should say another huge influence on my life and the life of my brothers and sisters has been a family that my father met when he traveled to the States to go to school, and they were the Sachs. They were his American family who he went to when it was time for, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And after my dad died, they kind of became like surrogate parents for us. And I remember when I was working, Mr. Sack and Mrs. Sack asked me about my life, what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to have a job or whether I wanted to have a career. So that was another point at which I really had to think, what kind of impact do I really, really, really want to make on the world? And then I realized that, if you apply yourself and you really, invest, just like they did, because they were philanthropists who did a lot of work around the world. Mr. Sack was a businessman, and also Mrs. Sack also. And they made a huge impact. So I learned a lot. I would say there were a lot of very pivotal moments in my life that shaped where I am today.
Yeah, that's good. So I can actually ask you, what drives your passion for children?
I would say, well, I was kind of born with it. I can't remember a time when I did not love children. I did not have this special understanding for children. And then I also am a very spiritual person, and I love God a lot. And sometimes I believe that your prayer life also is your work. And so children, I've always been drawn to children. I've always been drawn to the child who is not understood, the child that nobody might understand, or that needs the extra ear, the child that is acting up, but it's really because he's hungry, or the child is acting up, but it's really because he just doesn't understand the way the teachers are teaching. So I've always been drawn to children. So I guess it's something that was really inborn, that I'm just living. So it's always been very easy for me to live it out.
That's nice. I can see it in you. And well, you're doing a good job. But let's look at the educational system in Nigeria. Having been in this in the educational field right now for a very long time in your life now as an educator. We see the way the educational system in Nigeria is going. So some persons, they just think education in Nigeria or owning a school or whatever is all business as it is. We see a few that has passion like you. Then very many others, it's not something about passion, it's about business. What will be your take on that in Nigeria?
I can say I was someone who witnessed a lot of change. Like I said, I went to many elementary schools. I went to only one secondary school. But I remember when I was going to school, there were no private schools. There were hardly any private schools. And when I was going to secondary school, everybody wanted their children to get into federal schools. There were some particular state or not very many private schools that you would want your child to get into. Then after that, most people kept their children in Nigeria until the riots started happening, and not really riots, but strikes started happening within schools, and then schools started shutting down for long periods of time. But there was a lot of pride in Nigeria's educational system then. And so I left right at the time when things were changing. So a lot of my friends and classmates also went to school abroad, but some of them with a little bit of the same purpose that my father had, that they wanted to go get the education and come back. But the state of the country continued to change. Then eventually, when I finished my education and came back, I would say that when I started PlayLearn, I was called the baby proprietress because a lot of the other proprietors and proprietors were a lot older. And I would say that there was a passion in all of them to have schools. They were self-made people that came from wealth. It might have been wealth by marriage, or wealth by circumstance, maybe inheritance, but they had a deep passion for schools. So it was a little bit different when I started. And I started at the time when the country was changing, and they were kind of enforcing the law that said that all children must be in schools. So a lot of women were going to work and finding that they didn't have the help, they couldn't keep help at home like they used to. Everybody had to be in school. So nursery schools were coming up. So my school started as a nursery school. So I witnessed a lot of changes in the country. There weren't a lot of nursery schools when Playland first started, or nursery schools that were being run the way that nursery schools, early childhood education was supposed to be run in the country. And then I would say that while Playland has been in existence, I've seen another change where, yes, it is kind of true that a lot of people now are going into schools as a business. And so even as a playing field, the way that Playland was positioned among other schools changed. And before it was kind of like, if we were all proprietresses, we could kind of respect ourselves for the differences and the legacy of each of our schools, and not really so much see ourselves as competitors. But within the years after that, really did change, and then it did become like dog eat dog. A dog eat dog. It was basically a business venture for a lot of people, and I believe that has really had an effect on the education of our children.
Yeah. Okay, I was saying people like you that are in that field of education, we just hope you'll keep striving and keep working with the passion that you've got to better our educational system.
Yes,
especially.
and I believe that a lot of people are doing that.
Okay.
I believe so. I really do.
Now, as the owner of a school as big as this, what are those challenges you've been facing as a woman? Because, there's this gender thing in the society. If it's a man, you might not have some issues, but as a woman, there's definitely sometimes you come to a place and she's the owner of us, things like that. So would like to know what are the challenges you've been facing as owner of the school, and how are you managing them?
Well, some of the challenges specifically as a woman, it's interesting because I would say I would feel like sometimes my nature tends to be more of a challenge than as a woman firsthand. A lot of people come and they hardly know I'm the owner of the school, first of all. And I think that has more to do with my nature. But I think that as a woman in business, sometimes you do find yourself when you tend to critique or tend to say things, it's referred to in a different way. It's taken in a different way. And a lot of times I do tell my staff, or even the person I'm talking to, that if I were a man, I know you won't see it that way. Or if I were a man, you would respect me, or you would listen to me in a different way. So that's always at the back of your mind. Being a woman and navigating the world, that's always at the back of your mind. But I would say that the school business, you would find there are quite a bit of women in the school business. So a lot of times when I am going for meetings, the meetings I still go for, you'll find that it is, you do get a lot of women. So I would say most of my challenges might come from, people that you have to deal with outside of the actual school circle. I am a single mother, and sometimes you would think that sometimes comes into play sometimes, but not as often as you would think. I think we have a lot of different kinds of mothers, and so our society is very, they are accepting of different people based on so many other things like integrity and moral upstanding than the fact that you're labeled a single mother, etc., etc.
Respect is an African tradition that is held very sacred here, and when a child at any point in time misbehaves in public, people tend to say, you don't have home training. You were not well groomed or trained and all of that. Now, I know so much that training is a two-way thing, as in the parents on one hand and the teachers on the other hand. And now, I would like you to tell us a bit of how you are grooming your pupils and students to become responsible and better citizens in the society.
Well, you're right. Parents have a huge role to play. My mom, I remember when we wanted to go to the store, in the car, my mom would warn us, before we went to the store, don't act a fool. And when we get in, all she has to do is give us a look, and we'll know to adjust. So parents play a huge role. They do. But the children are with us for a huge part of the day.
Yes.
They really are.
Spend more hours with you before coming back home.
They do. They do. So it's a partnership. But one thing I do know is that the little bit of time a parent spends time, good parenting, is a lot more powerful than any teacher. So the time in which a mother and a father spend with their children is powerful. So we can't take that away. However, we do teach our children and we reinforce. And so there are things that we might teach that they might not have taught at home, so we come up against that sometimes. But respect is a two-way street, and I believe that, like here, we treat our children with a lot of love and respect. And we make our children feel that they're the most important people in the world at that time. And so a lot of times children learn, like if a child doesn't greet, we, especially when they're much younger, we have the habit of just greeting them first. And a lot of times children will adjust and say, oh, I forgot. Then within time, that child knows I'm supposed to greet, as opposed to saying something that can dampen the child's spirit or make the child feel bad. Now, when the child reaches a certain age, they are supposed to know better. And so we do spend a lot of time training our children. We have etiquette classes, and even in the secondary school, we spend a lot of time talking about morals and integrity and other things.
So having built a career like this today on such a big school, and a good one at that, how will you advise women trying so hard to build a career for themselves, especially women that are family women, as in married women, trying to hold on to the home front and trying to build a career? What would you advise to them?
Okay, first of all, I would say, as a woman, I would say I understand that it is difficult. It is very difficult because women multitask all the time. We juggle jobs. I remember there was a exercise we used to do with men and women. If father's in the kitchen, he's doing that one thing. I remember my dad used to cook, and when he's cooking, nobody can disturb him. He just cooks, and that's it. But when mom's in the kitchen, she's doing a million things at the same time. So first of all, we need to understand one another. So my advice, I would start with something proactive. I would say, first of all, keep your dreams alive. Then the next thing is for women like myself, to also be a support to other women. It's not just by telling women, keep your dreams alive and do your best. What can I do to help you? People helped me. They did. They helped me. And a lot of times, they didn't ask for anything in return. They asked me, well, make sure you pull someone else up. They did that within the Black communities I worked in, and also the sisterhoods and the other women that shaped my life. So my advice will also come with a helping hand. Because if I understand that it is difficult for women to make it, then if I'm in a position, I should also be able to support in whatever way that I can.
Okay. But that's most of your life is like abroad. Now, this is Nigeria we're talking about. And you've ever heard of something called the pull hair down syndrome?
The pull
hair down syndrome.
Okay, kind of like the crabs in the bucket.
Kind of.
The crabs in the bucket, yes.
There's this mentality. Some people say women don't like helping women. As in, if you are in a place, maybe a group of persons, and there are more of women, the male counterparts, as in the men in the midst of the women there, will be able to speak with one voice, they'll be able to agree on something, but the women will never want to agree on, okay, let it be this person, or push somebody in front, as in, this is ours, our woman, let's support her. So I'm trying to say what I'm trying to say is this: women don't hardly support women. Let me not say don't support women, because we have a few that do.
Yes.
Women hardly support women. So that's the concept of women supporting women. It's been like, it doesn't work over here. Do you really Because you've talked about this right now, we should support one another. What will you do, or what can you do to help that woman up? So what will you advise women concerning supporting each other? Because it's really, really a terrible thing here in Nigeria.
Well, I would say this. I do understand, and I do know that it does exist. I think one of my biggest, my Buddhist awakening had to do around marriage and children. You know, pregnancies. We hide our pregnancies from other women. We hide the fact that we're getting married from other women. It happens, and I never understood that. That was probably my first understanding, because like you said, my formative years were kind of, starting in the States and moved back to Nigeria. So I always tell people, yes, I did go to the market and learn how to speak Pidgin so I could buy things in the market. But, you know, I moved back to the States and then I came back to Nigeria. So I would say it's almost becoming balanced. So I am not going to say, like, I have a daughter who's turning 13. So I'm not going to paint I'm not going to have her look at the world through rose-tinted glasses and say, you know, every woman's circle you are going to be in will be one where you're going to stand, you know, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And however, I will tell her that I have been in circles that it is the opposite, and try to give her examples of that, so that if she has 3 friends, at least she might find one that will be a support to her. Like I said before, I still have that circle of my Federal Government Girls College circle, and we still support each other till today. You know, through joys and sorrows, we still support one another. I had a very interesting life, because I went to an all-girls high school and an all-girls university and an all-women's college. And that's Mills College. And I still have the circle of friends from there too. So we still contact each other every once in a while. And like I said, within the Black community too. So I would say let's just try to promote what is positive. If we feel that women are not supporting each other, then let us be an example for the younger generation. I know with my teachers, because like we said, it's mostly women who are in education. So I have a lot of female teachers. So I try my best to support them when they're in school, support them when they get out of school, when they need help, financial or otherwise. And because of that, a lot of the people who work with me also support other people. Even without my knowledge, I hear about a lot of my staff and admin helping women both in our school environment and outside. So I would say a way to counter that little by little is to publicize those times when we women are found supporting one another. Because I think too many times we publicize the times when we're not. And then the younger generation feels that this is just the way it is. You know, so I think that is a way that we can counter it.
And live a better life as women together.
Well.
Okay. And yes, if you've just joined us, it's the program The Woman in You. On this program, we inspire you. We tell you that you can achieve whatsoever that you dream about to want to achieve in life, because you are wonderfully made. As a woman, you are outstanding. Yes, you are marvelous. You are adorable and nice. And you can be whatever you dream about to want to be in life. My womanhood is my pride. And we're still talking with Aunty Abby. Yes, the owner of Playland and Lawrence Printers Academy here in Asaba. Okay, Bam, what actually is the most important lesson you learned from your mom?
My mother. My mother was a dynamic, very interesting woman. Like I said, we lost her, unfortunately, about 2 years back. Can I count the lessons I learned from my mother? There are so many. One of the first is her sense of adventure. My mom loved adventure. Nothing scared my mom. She traveled. She traveled all the way.
She's a strong woman.
Yes, she was a powerful woman. She traveled all the way to Nigeria to meet my dad's family and to convince her family that this was the life she wanted. So she loved to travel. She loved reading, so she instilled in all of us love for reading. She was an educator. I learned, like I said, I almost inherited from her this love for children and this deep understanding of the needs of children, especially the early child. My mother didn't believe in age. In fact, even if you were to ask me my mother's age, I would not be able to tell you. She lived an ageless life. She just believed that you should just live your life to the fullest. Never let anything stop you from achieving that which you want to achieve. So there are just too many to count. She taught us a lot of lessons.
That's good. And so apart from your mom, who are those other women that actually inspired or shaped your life one way or the other?
There have been a lot. Like I said, the Prentice in Laura's Prentice was actually Mrs. Sack, the couple I told you about. Okay. Her life also was a life of adventure. She gave a lot from her heart. And she was also somebody who taught me to dream. I remember when I got into Harvard and I thought I was going to pay my way through Harvard by taking on jobs that she found out. And she was so upset with me, and she made sure. I remember she was petite, and I remember she hardly ever got upset, but she was really, really upset with me. And she said, "You're going to live a life of giving. That this is a time for us to give to you." And in those words themselves, I learned that like this life of helping others so that they can be able to help others. I saw her so passionately want to live it. One of my mentors is Miss Marion David, and again, she taught me so much about my life and working with children and this, living your passion and also being excellent. One of my professors in school, Dr. Dorothy Saruda, also was like a surrogate mother to me also, and she also taught me about struggle and what it means to stand up and be proud and not to let anybody define who you are. Make sure you use your voice. There are just too many to count, really. But if I had to put it in a nutshell, I would start with those.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Like they say, it's not a bed of roses. Haven't traveled very well. You're well traveled, I can say that. We have this mentality in Nigeria. Most of our young ladies, women, believe they can find these roses somewhere outside Nigeria if they go abroad. And then they hit the roads, they hit the airwaves, they hit the Mediterranean. They just want to hit anywhere they can hit to get out of Nigeria and go to be Europe or wherever. They just feel that's where they can find the roses on the bed. But they've told us life is not the bed of roses. But some believe they can actually find it somewhere outside Nigeria, and then they in troops, they leave this country. And we have a lot that have lost their lives, the Mediterranean. We have a lot that they're going through a lot, even presently, and the Libya and wherever. They are, some might not die, they're still living, but they've lost their womanhood and things like that. They've been through a lot in life. All we advise to such.
Okay, we certainly can't pretend that life in Nigeria is easy. It definitely is not. I believe that our leaders can do so much more for this country, and Nigeria really should be at a different place, and we really could have done better for our younger people, including myself, because I guess I'm amongst the generation who has been failed by the generation, even the present one now. However, life is not easy anywhere. It really isn't. And so if I was to advise anyone, I would say that you kind of make, you say life is not a bed of roses, but even within a bed of roses, there are still thorns. There are still thorns. And so a lot of times when people travel to places, they don't often say the truth, because hardly anywhere are you going to be instantly gratified. And I think what's really happening to the generation to come, the generations that are behind us, is this sense of instant gratification, and this sense that I can make it rich. And that's what they see, and that's what they're striving for. I remember there were times when people were proud of the little that they had. As long as they could educate their children and afford to buy a car, pay their rent and things, people were satisfied. Now everyone wants to be a millionaire. Everybody wants to blow overnight. And it's hard for people to believe that you could live and truly be happy, even if you don't have huge amounts of money. And sometimes it doesn't sound right coming from people who, young people or other people might say, well, it's easy for you to say. But that's why it's important for people to share their stories, because it always wasn't like that. People had to work very hard to get to where they are. Not everyone is born with a silver spoon in their mouths. Not everyone has an opportunity to have help. Not everyone, people did have to struggle. So sometimes we do have to listen to each other's stories and appreciate the path it takes to get to wherever we want to get to. And also satisfaction, being satisfied with what we have sometimes, it is difficult. That is a hard one, because a lot of people are leaving. And a lot of times you can't really blame anybody. They just shut down universities. And I know when I was in secondary school, they were shutting down in universities then. So what really has changed? And the reason for it really doesn't make sense to our young people. So I believe it has to start from the top. So even if I was to talk to young people, there's a part of me that is realistic and knows that it's not going to be easy when you get there, but it also isn't easy here. So that's a tough one. It really is, because I'm experiencing a lot of people who are leaving, and it's hard because you don't want to say, you shouldn't go in, you be going, and it is selfish. There are doctors that are leaving, and so what's happening to Nigeria's healthcare? There are, Nigeria's losing a lot. They call it the brain drain. A lot of people are leaving, and so when young people see that, what are we to say?
Okay, we kind of agree that the doctors are leaving. These are professionals, we agree, and they're going out there and do professional jobs. Now we're talking about our young ladies, our young girls that haven't got a profession with them. Some do have, but some no. They just want to check out of this country any which way, and we've had a lot that died on the way. If peradventure, we know the economy is very bad. We know that's the truth, bitter truth, as they say. But then, would you rather advise you check out and
basically die
at the Mediterranean,
or end up as a slave,
or go through the other countries, that they go through, African countries, and suffer the kind of things that they are suffering? What do we advise these guys?
Well, the first thing, we have to get these women's stories out there. We do, because like I said, voices matter. Our stories matter. So who's telling the stories? Who's the face? There's human trafficking going on all over the world. Who's at the face of human trafficking? Are we telling our stories? Are we telling our girls' stories? Are we doing enough? Because it's one thing to wag a finger at a girl and say, you shouldn't do this. But it's another thing for that young woman to hear from another woman's voice, to hear another person's voice. So I believe it's also our responsibility to get the stories out there. What's happening to our young girls? And I don't just mean on social media or TikTok, YouTube. No, I mean documentaries.
Okay.
You know, that tell the story of what is happening to our young girls and make it important. You know, when we have movies like Black Lives Matter, our girls' lives matter.
Definitely.
And sometimes, you know, that self-esteem and that self-worth, you know, we sometimes have to promote it ourselves. Where are our girls' stories? We have to tell them ourselves. And we also have to stop blaming the victim. Because sometimes we go through a system of blaming the girls. So even sometimes when they talk about women being killed for rituals, sometimes you kind of hear this undertoned wagging of fingers at the girls.
Yeah.
And sometimes we are not demonizing the people who do it enough. It now becomes a woman's, you know, the woman was lured by this or that. Okay. So I believe it's both ways. We do have to tell the girls the truth about what they possibly can face, you know, when they go to these places.
Such journeys.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately,
yes.
if you look critically and you want to find out, majority of the people that traffic our girls are women.
So then you're going back to
yes.
how
women supporting women the right way.
Yes,
is still what we're talking about right now.
Yes, it's true.
So
it's true.
We need to, and most of them will tell you, they just have to go out to get a better life. And then you ask the questions: can't we have a better life in Nigeria?